I trained in India, I did my neurology training, the whole of it in Bombay, and I came to England, to Queen Square in 1990 as a research fellow to the late Professor Anita Harding to do a bit of neurogenetics. And that's when I met David Marsden at one of his famous book rounds, and following a little argument over a case, he got a bit interested in me, and subsequently I went for his ward rounds and took an active part in his movement disorder teaching. It was then he offered me a fellowship in movement disorders, which I did for 3 years, and following that I was offered a lecturership here, and subsequently a senior lecturership, and I became a consultant neurologist in movement disorders, and then eventually became a professor. When I came here, I never expected that I would stay this long, firstly, and secondly end up where I did. So it's true to say that they never let me go back. I was here for 6 months, but now nearly, how many years now? Is it a long time? And I'm still here, but enjoying it. So the practice of movement disorders has changed, and probably not completely changed. It's changed in some ways because there has been a big expansion in genetics mainly. So the definition of a number of movement disorders, which we had before mainly clinically, are now better divided genetically, and these genotype-phenotype correlations has brought a new aspect to movement disorders. But what has remained the same is that movement disorders remains one of the areas of neurology which is still very much clinical. So this is one place where you can look at a patient and more or less you come to your diagnosis based almost entirely on clinical grounds. So that hasn't changed, and I think that will probably not change. But there have been other changes because of the advances in mainly in the genetic field. I think when a young neurologist or a person new to the movement disorder field comes in and he's faced with this plethora of unusual movements in different patients, it can be quite daunting. And you say, oh my God, I can't make out difference between chorea and myoclonus or tics or whatever it may be. And that needs a bit of experience. And you've got to, and I learned this from David and his Marsden and his teaching, that you've got to organize your mind in a way, in a sort of a stepwise fashion, where you first identify what is the main movement disorder you're dealing with. You think about the age and the distribution. You then think about syndromic association. What are the other things going with this movement disorder? And then, of course, you have to think about different etiologies which may cause this type of presentation. And for that, you need a little bit of knowledge and information which you got to read about. But things do come with experience as well. So I do remember that David would say this, what the mind doesn't know, the eyes can't see. So you may be seeing something, but because you've never known about it, heard about it, you can't see it. So that's where the knowledge comes in, and that's you have to keep updating yourself with the knowledge. And then it's easy. Once you follow this schema, and you've got this pattern, and you've got this organization in your mind, you can actually put in new information into these slots, and then you can make the diagnosis. So things start, seem to be, oh my goodness, how did he know that, or how did he diagnose this? But it comes from this combination of a organization of your mind and also some knowledge and of course experience. There's nothing like experience. So when you have that experience behind you, you are able to make these diagnoses. There are of course lots of things you can't diagnose, and there are of course lots of things you get wrong, and when you look back and you say, it was this and I missed it. So that happens to everybody, and I think you should never feel that you know everything. You keep getting surprised, and that in fact is the joy of medicine and joy of movement disorders. So I do make some diagnoses, but I'm sure I miss a lot, and I do make a lot of mistakes, like everybody. A basic textbook, I think, it's sort of being a bit immodest, but I would actually recommend the little book which we've written, Mark Edwards, Neil Quinn and myself. I think it's a very small, concise, extremely useful book at the bedside for people who are new into the field. But you can read anything, and as long as you read something, and you also learn by experience. So you learn by visiting ward rounds, staying in the clinics. And my suggestion would be, rather than maybe perhaps reading every time you read a book, every time you see a new, interesting patient, which you didn't know about before, that very night, that evening, go home and read about that. So you see your first patient of neuroacanthocytosis, you go home and read everything about neuroacanthocytosis, and you'll never forget it. So that's what I used to do. So you see a new patient, corticobasal degeneration, never heard of it in the past, you go home and read about that. And that then stays with you for life. The Marsden's Book of Movement Disorders, this was I still don't know how I did this. It's a long story. It was actually, this book was started by Ivan Donaldson and David Marsden, probably around 1980, sometime around that time. And they almost achieved it a number of times, but never actually managed to finish it. About 1998, when I was working with David Marsden, I used to see him every summer sitting in his library and with lots of books around him and dictating. And I asked him once, "What are you doing?" And he said, "I'm writing this damn book." And I sort of scurried off before he asked me anything, but he called me back and he said, "I think I've got a good idea. Maybe you should join in this." So no, I'm actually quite full. But he did actually write to the editors, which are Oxford University Press, and asked them whether he can take on an additional editor. And as you know, he then died in September 98. And I didn't hear anything about this till about 2000, when I received a box from Oxford University Press saying, "You agreed to do this book." So I said, "I don't have any time to do this." But later, one day when I was looking at a chapter, I found that this was an amazing book which David had started. It was like David was talking to me in those pages, just the way he used to do his clinical teaching. So I decided to take it on unilaterally, single-handedly. And initially I thought, well, what will it take? 52 chapters, update one chapter every few months, and we'll be done in about 2 years. But this is a sort of a circular thing. You finish one bit, another bit is still left undone, and you're trying to chase your own tail. So 9 years down the line, and then eventually with help from a very bright and dedicated research fellow, Susan Schneider, I managed to finish it. And now when I look at it, I cannot believe that we've actually done this. It's an amazing collection of the clinical material, pictures, graphs, collected over a period of time, and also as updated as I could possibly do it, which you can do in a book. So I think for me it's an amazing thing which I have managed to do. And of course the jury is out and people will look at it and like it or criticize it, but it's a big weight off my shoulders, and I'm very relieved, very pleased that we did put it into press.